traditional service-driven model to being person-driven, where people with disabilities are able to exercise self-determination. Here in New Zealand, we are working closely with the disability sector to redesign the way we support disabled people to live a good life. We are changing the disability support system from providing a menu of services to a more individualised approach that emphasises facilitation of support in the community. This requires a transformation of thinking and the way we work. The focus based on the principles of choice, control and flexibility has challenged us all. This approach is the beginning of a shift in authority and decision making to those living with disabilities and their families. And early on, when we started developing individualised funding, many people thought IF was the answer to self-direction. What we know is it is only one part. We must trust the families and those who experience disability to know best what is important to them. So the Ministry the Ministry of Health is one of a number of ministries that supports disabled people. Our role is as a principal advisor to government on health and disability, and also the direct commissioning of services. Disability support services sits within service commissioning, and our team is responsible for IF and EIF. Murray and I are based in the Auckland office, and we thought it was really important that you know that there is only a team of 33 people within Disability Support Services. We have 4 teams across the country. We are responsible for administering $1.1 billion of funding, and we manage about 1,200 contracts. So who are we talking about? We're talking about the 32,000 people with disabilities that we support in New Zealand. The major service groupings that we fund, the major services that we fund are listed here, and you'll see that approximately 7,600 people access residential care. In a transformed system, we wouldn't necessarily be purchasing these services. We would instead be purchasing more flexible arrangements that give people increased control over their supports. And from this slide you can see where the current funding goes. So the biggest spend is on residential, yet only 25% of the people we support are living in residential services. So just to give you a very brief history of DSS in New Zealand, in 1993 the government introduced the New Deal, and disability moved from social welfare to health. The current DSS framework was developed and NASs were introduced. In 2001 the disability strategy was launched. In 2006 we had the last closure of the institution, Kimberley and Levin. And in the early 2000s there were lots of complaints about disability support services, there was limited flexibility and there was pressure for change. In 2006, New Zealand signed the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and in 2008 there was a Select Committee inquiry into the care and provision of support services to disabled people. So part of the government response to the Select Committee inquiry was to expand the number of IF arrangements. And back in 2008 there were approximately 200 people accessing IF. And we also developed a new model demonstration that was made up of local area coordination, supported self-assessment, choice and community living, and enhanced IF, by providing more flexibility to build on people's strengths. And then later in 2011, post the Christchurch earthquakes, the then Minister of Disabilities asked a group of people to write a report about how to improve supports for people during the day. The group came back and very strongly said that you can't just look at what happens during the day. And the resulting report became what is now known as the Enabling Good Lives report. These 2 demonstrations of the EGL principles were started, Christchurch in 2013 and Waikato in 2015. This brief history points to a number of strategies and documents that underpin the work of DSS, They underpin the most recent developments in self-direction and the signal to move to a transformed system. This includes the goal of shifting from social spending to social investment. Tomorrow, the Honourable Bill English will be talking about the government focus in this area. And so I'm going to hand you over to Murray, who will talk about these specific areas of self-direction.
So, as Amanda said, we're steadily moving away from a service-driven approach towards a transformed system where people are able to direct their own supports. This diagram shows a wider view of a continuum of funded supports with a number of flexible options on it. People are allocated a personal budget and can choose how they wish to be supported. Across the continuum, people exercise self-direction over their supports and can choose how much self-management they want to take on. At one end, the person is responsible for two key things: management of the funding and the quality of the supports. And this includes purchasing and commissioning all supports. Current models with this are individualised funding, enhanced individualised funding, and direct funding model in Enabling Good Lives Waikato. At the other end, they can choose how much support they need. I heard a session about shared management. In these models, there is more of a partnership between the provider and the person with the ministry assuring quality. So some examples of those are choice in community living and flexible disability supports. So a bit of history, individualised funding. So I want to just show how things have changed. In the late 90s, there were a number of ad hoc arrangements that developed because existing services just didn't work. Individualised funding was seen as an option of the last resort when services had failed. In 2003, the Ministry wanted to formalise IF-like arrangements to get away from all these ad hoc arrangements. We like systems, and we like, I don't know why, we do. We started developing formal policies and guidance. The Ministry contracted an individualised funding host provider, which is Manawanui, to assist with the ongoing development of individualised funding. However, it was still quite difficult to access the formal individualised funding scheme as there was very rigid access criteria. The person had to be stable. I'm not sure what stable really means. They had to have very high needs, and the only way to join was through Ministry approval. And so by 2008, there were only 200 people. So we made some changes as a result of the Select Committee report. We widened the criteria, we changed how hosts were funded, we increased the number of host providers, and we made individualised funding available across New Zealand. However, this wasn't quite far enough, as only allowing people with home and community supports to enter individualised funding limited its uptake. So in 2014, the Ministry further expanded the National Individualised Funding Scheme to include respite. Now over 3,000 people access individualised funding, and close to a third of the home and community support services population now choose to use individualised funding. What we know, we've recently done a survey on people who use individualised funding. People invariably say it's transformed their lives. We have overwhelming feedback of the value individualised funding has to people, and a lot of that is to do with support of hosts, families, people being very creative. To the new model demonstration. It was the first demonstration that included independent facilitation through local area coordination, as well as an assessment based on strengths, which is supported self-assessment, and a different approach to funding allocation, as well as enhanced individualised funding, which was a budget for supports rather than services. Individualised funding and enhanced individualised funding is very similar. The difference is supports rather than services. We've learned a lot from the new model demonstration, including the value of the various components and how they can enable people to have increased outcomes. However, some of the key learnings have been it's very difficult to introduce a new system where the existing system is still fully operating. In the Bay of Plenty, we added components of a new system on top of an existing system, and it created confusion and tension between various parties. Moves to transform the disability system have improved people's lives, but we don't know. We don't have the evidence, enough evidence, to see whether they're fiscally sustainable, just because we haven't had enough time. We know that not everyone wants to manage their own budget. Overly complicated processes or bureaucratic processes can stifle creativity and devalue the self-determination of disabled people. Funding should support outcomes rather than just pay for set tasks, so we need to do a bit of work with funding allocation and reviewing. Processes for moderating personal budgets need to be developed to ensure sustainability and that people can access what they need. So as a result, we're planning future changes to enhance individualised funding. And some of what we've learned has influenced how enabling good lives demonstrations work. Choice in community living. It's a component of the new model demonstration, which has been demonstrated in Auckland and Waikato, and we're currently expanding into Otago, Southland and Hutt. Choice in community living is an alternative to existing residential services where disabled people are supported to live in their own home. Choice in community living was originally intended to be cost neutral across government and achieve better outcomes. Recent analysis indicates that supporting people through choice in community living rather than a residential service meets and even exceeds that objective. So people are spending less of their allocated budget and achieving better outcomes. The evaluation of choice in community living showed a number of things. People told us they've had the freedom to live their own lives in ways they've previously not been able to. There's been a shift in the power balance between the person and paid staff. People are fitter, they're more engaged, they've become more connected with activities in the community. They're experiencing more choice and control in their lives and over their supports. But on the more difficult side, we've learned that there's a culture shift needed in organisations when they change from delivering services to person-directed supports. It can also take considerable resource and time to set up these arrangements. One of the things that providers have told us is they could do more if there's more flexibility built into their contracts through removal of traditional service boundaries, and that it wouldn't necessarily have to cost more. People as well tell us they want support that works alongside them, a partnership, rather than services that are done to them. So in late 2015, early this year, we introduced flexible disability supports within the Enabling Good Lives Christchurch demonstration, partly as a response to this. It's the first time we're trialling fully flexible contracting. Under flexible disability supports, people direct their supports and can choose how much responsibility they want. For example, the person may not wish to fully manage their budget or employ or even purchase supports. The provider can support them with this. While it is still early days for flexible disability supports, outcomes for people are already looking promising. On to the Enabling Good Lives demonstrations. There are 2 demonstrations of the Enabling Good Lives principles. I've seen some people who are involved in those demonstrations today who are attending. There is a workshop tomorrow on Enabling Good Lives Waikato. Both demonstrations are trialling concepts in slightly different ways. They're both demonstrations of how the application of the Enabling Good Lives principles can enable a person to have a better life. The demonstrations are providing evidence to government about how the system can be transformed. The key concepts for these demonstrations have been a shared vision for change, leadership from all the key stakeholders, involvement of disabled people, their families, whānau and organisations in the design and implementation, independent facilitation, so local area coordination, navigation, tūhono with the connectors, cross-government, individualised and portable funding, and flexible support options. So the Waikato group are sharing some experiences from the demonstration tomorrow, I think in a workshop. There is very strong evidence that independent facilitation combined with a joined up personal budget that can be used flexibly improves the quality of life, sense of empowerment, self-determination and levels of choice and control for people. We want to close this session by showing you Kylie Black's story. She's sitting here somewhere. There's no better way to show you the new approach in action than by playing her story. Kylie has described this new approach as life-changing. Kylie is here today and on the Enabling Good Lives panel tomorrow. I want to thank Kylie for her generosity in sharing her story with everybody today. Thank you.
Hi, can I get me? So I was just sitting on the previous session before with around the shared partnership and what overseas are doing. So I'm going into the future for New Zealand under IF and stuff like that to enable people that have trouble managing their own IF, that don't have natural support to help them manage it. We look at a process similar to shared partnership, and so we don't actually have to buy the support we need to manage our IF.
Yes.
How long is that going to take?
Those things, some of those concepts are already being tested within Enabling Good Lives, both in Waikato and in Christchurch through flexible disability supports, and also with choice and community living. I can't tell you how long, unfortunately.
So the flexible disability supports is available in Christchurch and the Enabling Good Lives in Waikato. So after those evaluations we'll have a better sense of how that can be rolled out.
So my question is, when does it come into Auckland? Next year, right? April 17?
We're doing our very best.
I believe they are, actually.
Question about EIF. We're in Wellington. I'm just wondering, is it because of this country and
So the question, yes, the question was about EIF and when that would be available in the rest of the country.
So at the moment, people will know that EIF had some hiccups. We had some hiccups over purchasing guidelines, we had some hiccups over funding allocation. We're planning some work to fix some of those. Once we're comfortable with those fixes, we'll then be able to consider rolling those out.
I'll just qualify, it's not we being comfortable, it's the ministry. It's not me. We're quite comfortable. Yeah, look, I mean, I think we're getting overwhelming feedback, and we've just had a session on respite, and we know that we need to move quicker, and it's really just how we do that in a way that doesn't undo everything that we're doing without taking things on.
If we added enhanced individualised funding right now into the system, it would probably not work properly. And what we have heard from people, some people using enhanced individualised funding, is that it's been absolutely horrible for them. And we don't want that experience for people. We want to roll out something that actually really works well. On the other hand, we've heard it working rapidly, but we know there's some significant system problems that have to be solved before we roll it out.
Which was the example that we heard this morning several times around tapping onto the system, and that actually it's the whole system that needs to work.
Just hold that mic.
Yes.
Because the video's ready to go. But I'll make sure you
I was just going to say, is it more like people using the funding kind of thing?
Not at all. Not at all. And it's someone will have had this experience, but it's very hard to describe what it is that people can purchase under something like enhanced IF, and our answer is often it depends, and nobody wants to hear it depends, they want a yes or a no, and actually it really does depend.
Yeah, okay, go.
Enabling Good Lives is a partnership between people with disabilities and the government, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Social Development and the Ministry of Education. And it's a new way of doing disability supports. It puts people with disabilities in the forefront as opposed to the background, and I am able to employ the people I want to live the life that I want to, and I'm able to employ people who are my age who I have value with and who add to my life. I found out about Enabling Good Lives Waikato initially through the workshops that were being held before the demonstration started. I was going along and volunteering with those, and then I was asked to speak. And so yeah, that's initially where I heard about it, and I fell in love with the idea. And yeah, it's been fantastic. The difference between Enabling Good Lives Waikato and the system that I used before is life-changing. Actually, I now have freedom to live the life that I want to live, and I'm not constrained by having people sent in at set times for set hours. I get to have the choice and control over my life, and I've been able to build wider communities. The only option I had beforehand was quite controlled, and I often didn't get a choice of what time people turned up or who turned up. One of the things I really struggled with is that I would often be very ill in the bathroom and a different person turned up every week, and I wasn't well enough to train people and tell them what to do and how to do it. But yet they were wanting that and needing that from me. I wasn't in a place to be constantly having different people walking through my home. A lot of people were older. I also used to struggle with that because I just wanted to be with people my own age.
My name's Marissa, and I flat with Kylie, and I'm also a part of the crew with Enabling Good Lives Waikato. As a flatmate, the changes I've noticed in Kylie are physical, mainly. In the last few months, her condition has deteriorated and it has affected many areas of her life. But the beauty of Enabling Good Lives is because it's relationship-centred and runner-focused, that her well-being and her inner self has remained whole, and she's remained happy and enjoying the most that she can out of life, and seeing that as a support person and flatmate has been great.
So from my first meeting with the Connector, I started working on what I wanted life to look like. And so we sat down and we discussed and made some plans, and then I went through the supported self-assessment, which is a tool that allows you to go through and work out what kind of support you need. And I found it really beneficial because I was the one in charge and I was the one that had the control over that. That then went to the EGL committee, Waikato, and they came back with their budget. And then from there, we were able to negotiate exactly what was needed. The beauty of Enabling Good Lives is that I'm actually directly funded, and the money comes into a bank account that I've set up, and I have control over how that money's spent. I use my Enabling Good Lives budget. The cool thing about it is it offers you a chance to use it quite creatively. So you don't just have to use it for support services and hours. I've been able to purchase items that are disability related costs through it. So what I do is if there's an item that I believe that would benefit me, then I submit a form to the Enabling Good Lives Committee, and then they have the end say over whether it's approved or not. Some of the items I've been able to buy is a fast speed blender so that I haven't had to go onto medical formula, so I've been able to continue to eat real food. I've been able to also buy a kettle, which has been phenomenal. So you, instead of like picking up a kettle or having a tipper, you put the cup underneath and it's like a coffee plunger and it pours the water through, and then you've just got the weight of the cup and not anything else. And my crew, I call them, instead of support worker, they fill the kettle each morning and it holds 2 litres. So it means I can make a cup of coffee on my own without having to have someone here all the time. starting my Enabling Good Lives process was phenomenal. To start off with, you've got to create all your systems and decide what kind of path you're going to go down. There's a few different paths you can choose from. I ended up going with a thing called IR56. So I am the employer of my disability services, but I'm not counted as an employer, and my staff, my support workers, they pay all their own taxes.
How I find working with the Enabling Good Lives approach is enabling. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. It enables Kylie to live life to the full and to support people within the crew as well. And it enhances both our lives as individuals and our walks and journeys.
What I like about EGR Waikato is it has changed and revolutionised my life. I have control over my life. I can live life now. It doesn't take me an entire day to go to one appointment and back. I can have help to open doors. I can have help to push the lift buttons. I can have help to get the places that I need to go now. And I have a lot more equal access to those. I'm not confined and locked into my home with just having help to get ready in the morning, but then nothing, you know? So it really has, I'm able to work on my goals in life, and I'm able to dream and work towards bigger plans.
The changes I've noticed in Kylie since she's been on Enabling Good Lives Waikato is that she's got so much more independence and like freedom to be herself and do what she wants to do. Yeah, she's able to get to places, get to meetings and stuff. She's able to have fun with it though. She's got people who are around her age, like girls, and they're fun and they can go do girly things. Whereas before it was a little bit harder because she didn't really get to choose who she got, and you can see that she's so much more happier with the people that she's got around her and stuff now. So it's good.
The support that Enabling Good Lives has provided Kylie and the crew has allowed me to experience the friendship with Kylie as a face-on friendship. I don't see that I'm friends with a disabled person at all. I see her as a best friend, full stop. And to be able to enjoy that friendship and have it as normal as possible and doing life with each other as equally as possible is a real gift, and I believe that's how it should be with everybody.
I'm living in a flat now, and I'm living my own life, and that has been made possible because I now have the proper supports in place to live my own independent life. Through Enabling Good Lives, I have been able to rebuild my confidence. I have learnt again that I have a voice, that I can speak up. You know, I've been able to build community on a much wider scale. I'm no longer confined to my home. My friends have spoken about how they have seen the changes in me, and beforehand I would often be quite frustrated and quiet and reserved because I was broken in my system, and I was frustrated at being at home, and I was frustrated at banging against different community agencies and not being able to get in and not being able to have a say and not being able to access those because of all of the constrained and, you know, set parameters. And I can live life now, and I have been able to create an open door policy at home, and I have friends now who are able to come over and connect. I have been able to rebuild relationship with my parents as my parents, my siblings as my siblings, and my friends as my friends. And I haven't needed to be relying on them as a person with a disability, but I can now be seen as an equal player in my own life.
It's impacted my relationship with my sister Kylie really immensely. Beforehand, I was always having to juggle uni and working and taking her to appointments that she needed to be at and stuff because no one really was available. So it kind of turned into more of a chore than like kind of wanting to do it, which doesn't sound the best, but it kind of is how it was. And so with Enabling Good Lives Waikato, she was able to have her friends take her to different appointments and stuff, so it kind of freed up the time for me and her to just hang out as sisters and do fun things just like we used to do kind of thing. So yeah, it's made the relationship a lot more two-sided and more fun, I'd say. Yeah.
As someone who 10 years ago didn't have a disability but faces life with disability now, I never imagined to find myself in this position. I guess I'm so glad that Enabling Good Lives Waikato is accessible for me, because it's allowed me to pick up and start living full life again, regardless of my deteriorating health. And I have better quality of life now than I did before. I realise and understand that not everyone has access to this system, and that needs to change. You know, we all need access to live full, equal, quality lives and have the ability to have the control and say over our lives instead of having someone else dictate and tell us how we're going to live and what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. I think one thing that it's really changed, and I've had a lot of feedback on, is my friends have noticed such incredible differences in me. They have noticed increased confidence. They have noticed I'm much happier, I'm much lighter, as in freer and happier, because I can do the things I want to do when I want to do them and have the say over my life. And that's phenomenal. It's absolutely incredible. My dreams are to be able to continue living this life and build on it, to continue building strong community. I want to speak, to challenge people to look outside of our worlds, to see the worlds of others, to see what we do have and not what we don't, and what we can do and not what we can't, because we can all play a part.